Souls Tulsa and All Souls Everywhere members try to live out what we call love beyond belief.
Bring your whole self each week to our worship services, Humanist Hour, and programs for families and adults.
Empower your children with a religious education that helps them make their own decisions about what they believe.
Connect and learn from our community of diverse experiences, faith, and cultures.
Sing with others in one of our many choirs.
Explore your creativity and find healing in the chapter of your life that you're in right now.
At All Souls, our members care for each other through the highs and the lows of our lives.
Live out love beyond belief here in Tulsa, across our nation, and around the world.
Join us. Become a member of the All Souls family in our centennial year.
At All Souls, our members care for each other through the joys and the sorrows of life.
All Souls Tulsa and All Souls Everywhere.
Join today at allsoulschurch.org.
Okay, that's fine. Oh, very good. I just thought if I'm echoing. Okay. I gotta act like I know what I'm doing. Okay, okay. Wait. Oh, there we go. Oh my. Okay, maybe. Am I supposed to be playing? Okay. Now, folks, we're pretty laid back in this. I guess I need to be doing something. I may play as time goes by.
So beautiful. What a way to start a Sunday morning. Thank you so much. Rositza Goza is the concertmaster in our Tulsa Symphony. It's an honor to have you here with us this morning. Good morning, and welcome to The Point, where no matter what you believe or don't believe, you are welcome here. My name is Barbara Prose, and I'm really grateful to be here with you this morning. Feels heartwarming to be together. It's my first time in the sanctuary since we welcome people back. Oh my gosh, seeing old friends I haven't seen for years. Yes. And especially at this time, this heartbreaking time in world history. So we have a really important service for you with a message from Reverend Marlin and some more amazing music and an incredible chalice. We'll start with the chalice lighting from Caroline Guerra Wolf and Eric Wolf. They were married here in this sanctuary 5 years ago. They're celebrating their anniversary this weekend with their little 2.5-year-old son. So welcome to All Souls, where we love beyond belief, and we will now light this morning's chalice.
The chalice is a symbol that was crafted more than a generation ago in a time of fear and violence and division in Europe. It quickly became a source of hope and freedom for many people. So may it be for us today. As we light our chalice this morning, we do it for the people of Ukraine and are reminded by this flame of the courage required for the triumph of freedom.
Our chalice lighters mentioned that the flaming chalice symbol became a symbol for Unitarianism during the Second World War. That just sort of alluded to that. I wanted to say a little bit more about that. It was during the Second World War that a Unitarian minister and his wife do you remember their names, Barbara? I'm blanking.
Waitzel Sharp, Martha Sharp.
Yeah,
Reverend Waitzel Sharp.
Reverend Waitfield.
Waitzel.
Waitzel Sharp and Martha Sharp. They went over to Europe on behalf of the Unitarian Service Committee and were helping to get Jews and others who were trying to escape the Nazis out. And so they were creating papers and all kinds of things to basically sneak people to safety and it was like a spy operation almost. And they needed a letterhead that looked official. And so they needed a little symbol for it. And so they came up with, or an artist friend of them came up with this symbol of a flaming chalice, which combines both the symbol of a cup, which represents community, and the flame, which represents freedom. And that became the symbol on this letterhead, and only after the war became a symbol for our churches across the country. And so as we are back in a time in Europe where people are fleeing war and destruction again and seeking safety, that symbol that we have reminds us of what it takes and what it requires to try to keep freedom alive and to keep people alive and how precious they are. And it was actually after Reverend Waitzel went home, his wife Martha stayed and continued to work on behalf of the Jews. And her name is one of only 5 Americans who are considered the righteous among the Gentiles by the people of Israel in the famous museum there, where they have the names of the righteous among non-Jews, among the Gentiles, who helped during World War II, and she's listed there and honored in her memory. So we think of her, and we think of all those in the Ukraine today, and may the flame of freedom burn forever in the Ukraine.
invite you to feel this stillness and to be grateful for this safety as we remember members of our community who have died in this last week. And there are a few. I know many of us are carrying Trish Leeser and Dick Leeser and the Leeser family in our hearts this morning after a memorial yesterday. Also this morning, in the first service, I'll tell you, Xenia Kish, who's a professor of media studies at TU, told a story called The Mitten. Some of you may have heard it, about a mitten. It's a Ukrainian story about a white mitten that looks like the snow. And in the middle of winter, all these animals, they get in, small animals, big animals, a badger, a fox, a bear, and the mitten just keeps stretching to hold all of these animals that are just in desperate need of community and warmth and support. And then the mitten is just stretched to the max, and I think a big bear gets in, and then a little mouse who's cold comes up, and the mouse lands on top of the bear's nose. And Xenia just shared a beautiful message about, on behalf of the Ukrainian people and the global community, about how our capacity to bear suffering and also to reach out and connect with each other is much larger than we might imagine. And that even, and this is a Ukrainian woman, a woman of Ukrainian descent, part of the Ukrainian diaspora in Canada, said even as we focus on the people of the Ukraine, it's important that we keep our hearts open to people all over the world who are suffering for whatever reason. So this morning I invite you to stretch and open your hearts like that mitten in the story as we think of Nicole Vreeland, who lost her mother, Pam Halverson, on Tuesday, March 1st. And Nicole also has a little 3-week-old baby at home. And also we stretch our hearts open to hold Francia Allen and her friends and family on the loss of her Aunt Mary Lee Caldwell, who died on March 2nd. We stretch our hearts and our community and our consciousness even bigger to hold Laura Border and her friends and family, because Laura lost her father this past week. And we open our hearts, stretching to make more room for Harry Crampton and his friends and family. Harry Crampton is a longtime member here. Many of you may know him. He died this past week on March 3rd, and his memorial will be this Wednesday at 11 o'clock in the morning. We open our hearts to those Ukrainian citizens who've lost their lives. Stretch our hearts even larger to hold those Russian soldiers who haven't declared war, and most of whom don't want to be fighting in a war, but who are risking their lives, and to the people in Europe who are afraid of war. And we give thanks for this day and for this community and for this place and for our purpose here on earth. And we rest and breathe in a moment or two of holy silence.
You may have seen a video that's been kind of gone viral, and it's of a young boy who is playing the piano as the invasion begins in Kharkiv in Ukraine. It was a reporter from the Washington Post who originally who saw this and took this video, he was, as the air raid sirens were going off and the invasion was starting, he was in a hotel there in Kharkiv, and he walked out into the lobby just to, he didn't want to be alone in his room with all that, and he looked down this big staircase, and he looked down in the lobby, and there's this white piano, and this young boy was just playing this song, and he just captured this moment. And he said that when he was a young boy, his mom used to play the piano, and it used to help calm him down when he was upset. And so I just want us to watch this short video clip of the boy and take in the music and the moment that we're living through. Beautiful. Thank you, Rick. Thank you for just filling us, just so that we could take in for a moment some peace and calm, but also, if you're like me, also feeling, imagining what it must have been like this week when that song was played by that young boy, that we got to capture a picture. So much of this current conflict, we're being able to see different scenes because of the nature of the internet and video and people's phones, and such an odd time. And I've been feeling really conflicted this week in a number of ways. One of the things that has been on my heart is that for my 25 years of being a minister, I have, when wars or rumors of wars have broken out around the world, I have stood on the side of peace and ending violence and stopping the violence. And we actually hosted on our front lawn peace rallies before our country went into Afghanistan to try to stop it and say, don't do this. This is not going to go well. We don't need to do this. It's not necessary to do this. And we had people of all different religions, lots of folks from the Islamic faith were out with us, and it was just a beautiful day on the lawn, and we marched. And then before the Iraq war as well, that one we were even more people came out, more people were against. They said, this is no reason for this, and we actually wore sackcloth, and we marched through Brookside. Anyway, I've been a real activist for peace. We worked with the Peace Fellowship back then to do this. But this week, I was asked to come and be part of a rally of solidarity for the people of Ukraine, which we held this yesterday. And in it, the folks who were organizing it were calling for we need to get military weapons to the people of Ukraine. We need to create a no-fly zone. We need to make sure that these folks have the protection that they need. We need to advocate for it and all these other things. And I was sort of conflicted. I'm going to go and speak on behalf of more militarization. And yet, here we are in a time where brutalization and fascism are raising their heads in Europe. And I remember something that Jimmy Carter said about war. He said that war is evil. Let's get very clear about that. He said, now, sometimes it's a necessary evil, but it's still evil. And let's not confuse it for good. That even if you're fighting on the right side or a good side of a war, you're still killing people, involved in killing other people and harming folks. And war is just evil, even though sometimes it may be a necessary evil. And I would say where I landed was that this is necessary to try to support the Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom. But I imagine that you too might be feeling conflicted about different parts of what's going on right now and our involvement in it. Number one, I know you might be among those who are thinking about the fact that there's military conflicts going on all over the world right now. Why are we paying so much attention to this one? When other people are being bombed, other communities are being destroyed, and yet the whole world's watching here. And many people have said, is it because the people are white in Ukraine rather than people in most of the other parts of the world where conflict's happening right now? They're not seen as racially white or Christian. These people are Christian, and then maybe that's why we're fighting. So these are real issues that need to be thought about and talked about and addressed about the value of different lives. Now, if we reduced what's going on right now just to those factors, I think it would be a big mistake. But to think that those are not factors would also be a missed opportunity to look at a deeper question about who we value and why. Then there's also the issue, you might be thinking about how, well, didn't our country just use a false pretext to invade another country? Since 1945, there's been a new kind of understanding around the world that you can't just go in and invade a sovereign nation. Just because you have the might, just because you have the money, you can't just go in and take over and invade and destroy and just put in a government of your own and that kind of thing. But didn't we just do that in Iraq, where we said that there were weapons of mass destruction, and we got the world to sort of give us support to say it's okay to go in and invade this country because they're a danger to all of us. And then it turned out they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. And so there's some folks going, gosh, didn't we just, now Russia's made this false story about Nazis and other things, and they're going in and invading. And didn't we just do that? So is it kind of hypocritical for us to now be arguing against Russia? And I know folks are wrestling with this stuff, and we should be wrestling with these questions. And then there's also the issue of that many people are wrestling with it, that the United States military and the CIA have gone in and invaded, covertly in most cases, but invaded democratically elected governments and nations with democratically elected governments, and deposed the leaders, and then propped up an autocratic leader that was friendly to the United States. We've done it all over in the Middle East, in Latin America, and we've been doing it for decades. So now we're going to go and stand in front of the world and say, no, Russia can't do this. And there's a sense like, wait a minute, is this okay? Do we have a moral leg to stand on about this? And I think these are important questions for us to be wrestling with. I was really heartened that the Ukrainian community and those organizing the protests this weekend decided to do it in Greenwood here in Tulsa. The only community in the United States and North America that has been bombed and destroyed. 45 square blocks bombed, burned out, businesses, homes, just like we're seeing overseas. It's the only place in this 48 states in North America where that's happened. Pearl Harbor was bombed in Hawaii, but other than that, right here. And so we made a point of saying, as we stand in solidarity with the people in Ukraine, we also stand in solidarity with the survivors and the descendants of survivors of the 1921 race massacre who are still fighting for justice and reparations here. So we stood in solidarity. We also mentioned that we were on Creek land and Cherokee land there in the park of Reconciliation Park, where we had the rally. And we said, folks came in and took over the land and drove people through the Trail of Tears out of their homes. So there's a lot of warring and a lot of stuff that we have to wrestle with as we look at what's going on in the global situation. So we honored the land. We're in Osage land here. And so we honored the land in which we were doing this. And then the question comes up, so why, what is going on? Because you have Vladimir Putin saying that Ukraine is not really its own country. It's always been part of Russia. It's really Russian. They don't have their own history and culture. Well, that's just patently not true for anybody who knows anything about history. Ukraine has over 1,000 years of history, culture, and civilization that is uniquely Ukrainian. And in fact, Kyiv, which is right now being surrounded, was a bustling metropolis and center of civilization back when Moscow was still a farming community. So there is a rich history in Ukraine that is being denied. And in fact, Russia is trying to annex and wipe out the whole idea that Ukraine has its own civilization and culture. Now, even when the United States went into Iraq and Afghanistan and other countries, we in modern history, we didn't go and say, well, you're no longer Iraq or Iraqis, you're Americans, and we're taking over, and you're now going to be the 51st state. That's what's happening right now in Ukraine, is that there's an annexation trying to happen and a wiping out of a history and a culture and all of that. And so this is different, the denying of the existence of a people. And then there's this has a potential to destabilize the entire world. We're talking, this is nuclear powers that are involved. NATO and a superpower potentially, are involved one way or another right now, not completely going head to head at World War III, but we're involved. We're providing all kinds of weapons. We're providing money. We're providing all kinds of intelligence. There's cyber stuff going on. So we're in it. It just hasn't completely blown up to say NATO is fighting with Russia, but the beginnings are all here. And this has the potential to destabilize the world. So it makes sense that we're paying attention in a little different way right now. This matters, and it's important, and it's the right thing to be doing. Now, it is a bit of a David and Goliath story, right? You have the superpower of Russia against a country that's about the size of Texas, and the military they're completely outmatched in terms of weaponry and personnel and all of those things. Now, of course, in the story of David and Goliath, David wins. David's just a young little shepherd boy who has no armor, and yet Goliath is 9 foot tall, we're told, and he's got armor. The only part of him that's even exposed is a little bit where his eyes see through the armor. And this young boy goes down, and they say he had a sling and 5 smooth stones that he pulled out of the river. No armor, and he went down there, and Goliath laughed at him, it says in the story, and yet he was able to, with his sling and a stone, hit that one spot of vulnerability and knock him out and win. And so, David was a shepherd who eventually became a king. In Ukraine, we have a comedian who has now became president, and a war hero, and a hero to the whole world. And so then there's some vulnerabilities for this big super Goliath power of Russia. And I just want to say, what are the smooth stones that Ukraine has that could and I hope does allow them to maintain their democracy and their freedom. And there's a few things to keep in mind. And this isn't about, we're having a humanist service here, but even in the other service, I was very clear about the fact that, the David and Goliath story, which comes from the Bible, is a lot of people talk about it's about faith and faith in God and whose side God's on and all that. That's not a God that I believe in and that I think is what we need to be talking about. If God's involved, why are kids being bombed and killed, Ukrainian kids being bombed and killed right now? I don't think God's over here making this thing happen. So I want to talk about the faith that the people have in their own rights and their own freedom and the rule of law and the decision for self-determination. There is a deep faith that they have a culture and they have the right to choose who they're going to be in relationship with, they're going to be their leaders. And these are the smooth stones of democracy and freedom that have caused people like the United States and the European powers fighting against Germany in the Second World War and the Ukrainians today. So we're talking about the idea of popular sovereignty, the idea that people can choose who their leaders are. No dictator or autocrat from another country is going to come in and tell us who our leaders are going to be. And that is a strong driving force behind the people of Ukraine, because the Russian people don't have that. They don't elect their leaders. They can't vote Putin out next year or impeach him. And then there's freedom of speech. They don't have that in Russia. They can't. People are being arrested by the thousands over there for protesting peacefully, and they've wiped out all free press over there. Well, the Ukrainians don't want that. They want a free press. They want the ability to protest peacefully when needed. And so that's one of those smooth stones of a free liberal democracy that drive people to win against all odds and to fight to the end to try to maintain. Then there's the equality before the law, the idea that there's real laws there, that people can get some justice. And I know we struggle with that here in this country, certainly. We're still struggling with it, but we still have a fantastic justice system in many ways. It still needs to be reformed, but it is important that justice does happen and can happen, and it can continue to be reformed, which you don't have in an autocratic state like Russia. And then just the checks and balances and the separation of powers that we have in a liberal democracy that doesn't exist in an autocracy and a dictatorship like they have there. So the question I posed about this is, are we at war? That's the title of this message. Are we at war? Well, you would think we're at war here in the United States with each other. Right? The division is incredible. There's these culture wars going on as if it's the biggest thing in the world, that we're fighting over, who's sleeping with who or marrying who or what bathroom people are going into. Like, it's the biggest deal in the world. And there have been articles recently about, are we about to go into a civil war in this country over bathrooms and Mr. Potato Head and ridiculous stuff? A true reckoning about race that needs to happen and other things like that. So what I want to say is that this is an opportunity for us to see a bigger picture when real freedom is at stake, when real war is being talked about. And maybe we can back down off of some of our ledges of war and civil war and culture wars in this country and realize that we got a bigger war to fight. And hopefully not militarily, but the idea of protecting our freedom and the freedom of people who want self-determination and rule of law and the freedom of speech and all those basic things. I was listening to a TED Talk by the historian Yuval Noah Harari. He's from Israel, and he was talking about what's happening in Ukraine. And he said, watching another nation like this fighting for its freedom could be an opportunity for those of us in the West to set aside our culture wars between left and right and begin to recognize that we have a lot more in common and we truly need each other. He talks about how people on the right tend to lean towards nationalism and people on the left lean towards liberalism. And there's this idea that they're almost incompatible, and yet Harari's saying, no, we need both. And this, if we're watching what's going on Ukraine, we can see that we need to protect, we need to have our sovereignty of our nation and be able to protect our nationhood nationhood and to be able to know that we are safe and protected from other kinds of things. And at the same time, we value freedom. And with freedom may come other people's freedoms that we may not always agree with, but we want both. And if we compromise on either one, we could be in trouble. And that's what's happening in many ways in Ukraine right now. So what if we could recognize that to protect our freedom, we need one another in this country, and maybe this is the moment when we can step beyond the culture wars and go into unifying as a nation and recognizing how important it is to have each other. Now, I just want to say this word about war, because war, since 1945, well, let me say this, before 1945, for the entire span of human civilization, there have been wars, and the one which was the strongest was able to take over others indiscriminately, and war was the way. And monarchs and authoritarian leaders used war, and they had huge military budgets because it takes a lot of money and military in order to maintain an autocracy and a dictatorship and a monarchy and those kinds of things. And so you had in the 40%, 50, 80% of the money that came in to the king or the emperor or whoever went into military because that's what was needed to keep it all together. In 1945 was a moment in history that historians say, at that time, we started to create different systems, and we started to become better thinkers and make better decisions. And we said, just because a country can take over another country, they can't just do that and get away with it. And we created the United Nations and NATO's and other kinds of systems internally and externally to try to protect that peace. And we've had relative peace, certainly among superpowers, and superpowers who had the ability to take over that restrained in many cases. And so what's happened is the amount of money spent on military has gone down, and I'm going to show you, I think there's a chart we can show you, and if you're online, you can see it, to 2% on average around the world of GDP. 2% is what countries on average are spending. The ones who are spending more are mostly in the Middle East, mostly autocratic governments. Russia is up there at about 4.7 last year percent. The United States is high. We're at 3.7. Most of Europe is 2% or less of what they're spending on military. But here's the problem. With what's happening right now, already governments are starting to put more money into military. Europe, Germany's put it, Switzerland, all these countries are starting to say, we're going to put more money into military. And when that happens, that means there's less money for education, for infrastructure, for healthcare, and for the people to end poverty. And so it's just a bad thing. It's a lose-lose. And so this war that's happening in Ukraine is going to impact all of us. And unless we can get it to stop right away and soon and fast, and create this sort of new understanding of how the world's going to work. Because otherwise, everything's changing, and the military budgets we're going to see them creep up, and that's going to have a profound impact on people, on their health, on their education, and on their opportunities. So we need to, here in this country, recognize that we have to stop tearing ourselves apart from the inside. And we need to stop tearing down the institutions and the alliances that we have around the world. And this is a moment, and this is a time when we're learning that, and I think we can emphasize that, and that we should, and that's something that we can do. And then we can take this and make this a moment where there's a renewal of our sense of liberal democracy, what it stands for, what we're about, that we have a lot more in common than we have against each other. And maybe as a nation, we can finally come together to create a better world. So I want to ask us, who are listening, who are together, who are a community, who care deeply, to figure out ways that we can both support the Ukrainian people in their fight for their survival and their freedom and their basic rights. And I want us to also work to be part of the sort of the groundswell of Americans who are saying, let's stop tearing ourselves apart internally and let's figure out how we can live together as one. Because I believe that if we're united, if we're united in this country, I don't think there's anything we can't do. I think that if we're united in this country, we can create more and more better systems, more and more better decisions, and create a world that has greater health, greater knowledge, greater wisdom, and greater peace. And that's my hope for the world, and that's my hope for this moment. And I hope you'll join with me. Thank you. Wow. Incredible. Thank you. Incredible. I want to introduce you to somebody who you may know. We are giving awards in our 100th year as we lead to our 101st birthday at the end of this month to just some of the most special and remarkable people among us. I see a few who've been awarded with us right now. This is the only award that we're giving that is posthumous. And it goes to a beloved member of our church. You're going to hear about her in just a second on the screen. Her name is Trish Leeser, and she just means a great deal to me and to many of us here. And you'll hear more about her, so I won't tell her story. But my kids went through her school. You're going to hear about it, and she was just a great teacher, not only to the kids but to the parents, and a great part of this community. So we give thanks to the Partner Award because she partnered with us through her school for decades, and we are so thankful to Trish Leeser and her family, and we remember her today as we offer her this award and this tribute. Oh, they're having a little technical difficulty, is that? Oh, okay, so I'll tell you what. Barbara do a few announcements, and then when hopefully they'll get their technical difficulty up, and we'll be able to see the award from Trish. But if not, I'll tell you a little bit more about her after the announcements. All right, Barbara, come on forward. Thank you all for being such patient people.
Tell stories about Trish all day, so sit back. I do have a few announcements, important announcements for us this week. Thank you for that message and for this music, this glorious music this morning. Our UU Foundations class starts this Wednesday. That's a history of All Souls and Unitarian Universalism. You've heard a little bit about that today. This Wednesday, the next 3 Wednesdays in a row, Reverend Marlin will be teaching one class, I'll be teaching another, and our intern Corey Level will be teaching the third. That's at 7 p.m. starting on the 9th. And then also mark your calendars on Wednesday, March 23rd. Dr. Teresa Reed, former member here, member of the New Dimensions Chorale, head of the Department of Music here at TU back in the day, and now at the University of Louisville, has a new book out called You're Likely Not a Racist, and she'll be speaking about that book, and that promises to be a really wonderful evening on the 23rd. Shades, we're relaunching Shades for Black Americans, Indigenous people, people of color to be empowered and heal. That starts on March 21st, and you can talk to Corey Smith or Evelyn at the front desk for more details about that. And mark your calendars for the last weekend in March, the 26th and the 27th. We're having an art market on both days. One service at 10:30 on Sunday for our Heritage Sunday, celebrating our 101st birthday in person. Yes. Yes, there'll be lunch and a circus on the lawn, and Reverend Marlin and Bishop Carlton Pearson and Tamara Labach will all deliver short homilies, and I will be online with our Everywhere members, so mark that last calendar in March. We'll have a wonderful time here. I'm going to look at Lee to see if our video is working now or not. Okay, we're going to keep going. Maybe we'll have that honor at the end. Our offering today goes to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. You heard a little bit about that, the Sharps and the Chalice. They are doing lots of relief work in Europe right now. There are almost 1 million refugees already, and they do a lot of grassroots organizing, helping people's rights be represented, and also getting them the emergency supplies they need. So please give generously as you're able. Also feel free to make a donation to the church, and we will now gratefully receive this morning's offering.
What a special treat to have you with us today, and just remarkable. And thank you both, and Rick as well. We do have the video ready, so I do want you to see, because Trish is so special, and I do want you to see our short tribute to her.
Volunteered in the church's Partners in Education program, and organized countless.
Lisa, what an incredible woman. In just a moment, our chalice will be extinguished, and we will go forth. There's some coffee and refreshments, and I'll be out to greet you in the portico as we leave into the parking lot. But if you're here, if you're online, I hope you'll stay on Zoom and have some conversation with others, maybe talk about the issues of the day. But wherever you are and wherever you're going, I hope that you will find ways to build peace into your life and into our world and into our country itself. We do not need to be divided. We need to be united for the good of freedom and democracy and all that we care most fully about. So go forth into this day and into this week knowing that your life matters. Every single life matters. Our hearts go out to the people in Ukraine and those who are caught up in this disastrous moment. May we be a source of hope and healing at home and abroad. Thank you.
Oh, wow, beautiful. Yes, it's